Okay, so we're on to example 2 of completing the square. So this time it's asking us to use complete the square in order to solve this following quadratic equation. So the first step is very similar to the first video. So if you get stuck at all, have a look at the first video for me. Okay, so I'm going to start by writing my equation on the screen. So I'll have x squared minus 6x plus 2 is equal to 0. So we know we've got to use completing the square in order to solve this. So let's go through the steps of completing the square. So we know with completing the square we have one bracket. At the front we have an x and outside we have a squared sign. So in order to determine what this value is in here, we half whatever is up here next to the x. So in this case we're going to have minus 3. So the next step is to write out how we can write this x minus 3 squared. So we can write this as x minus 3 times x minus 3 in two brackets. So at school, obviously we're taught to expand the brackets. So let's expand these. And what would we have? We'd have x squared minus 6x and plus 9. So remember, we're ignoring that 2 is there at the moment. We wanted this bracket here to equal to x squared minus 6x. But it equals to x squared minus 6x plus 9. So similar to the first video, we're going to have to get rid of this plus 9. Now, to get rid of the plus 9, hopefully we know we're going to have to take away 9. So up here it's going to become minus 9. And then we can add the 2 on at the end. Fab. So we have completed the square. So now let's simplify this and get it in the simplest form we can. So we'd have x minus 3 all squared minus 7 equals to 0. Okay, so that's the first part. We've completed the square. Now we need to use this to solve x. So have a think, what does solving x actually mean? So when we solve x, that means find the value of x. So we need to get x equals. So the first part I would be tempted to move here is I'd be tempted to move this minus 7. So this minus 7 moved to the other side by rearrangement is going to be plus 7. So we'd have x minus 3 squared is equal to 7. Okay, so the next part we need to have a think at is we need to move that squared sign. So how do we move a square? Okay, we're going to square root it. So we'll have x minus 3 is equal to, okay, this is a tricky thing to get your head around. Whenever we square root, you can have a positive or a negative square root. So this would be equal to the plus or minus square root of 7. Okay, and we've only got one thing left to move now to leave the x on its own, which is this minus 3. So to move minus 3, it's going to become plus 3. So we'd have x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay, so if I type this in my calculator, you will get two answers. And there's one thing I want you to have a little think of here. So when I rearrange this, I could have moved this minus 3 to this side. So I could have said, okay, x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7 minus 3. Oh, plus 3, sorry. So the problem with this is that some examiners can get confused on what you mean, whether you mean root 7 plus 3 or whether you mean the square root of 7 plus 3. So always try to put your number in front just so there's no confusion. So this is the correct one here. Okay, brilliant.